Welcome to Michiana Main Lines. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Trainz Simulator again, the Trainz program, and this time we're going to be looking at the route from South Bend up to Niles. Here on the map we see South Bend down there to the south, Niles up towards the top. It's about 9 miles long. The South Bend Secondary, as it was known, and that's the cab ride we're going to be taking today, while I talk about some of the history and some of the things I remember about the line. If I say anything wrong or if you have anything to add, feel free to leave a comment. But we'll see how this is going to go. I'm going to try to juggle driving this train and shifting the camera views and thinking about what I'm talking about, so we'll see what we can do here. But here we are on the mock-up of the line here now at Pendle Street in Roseland, Indiana, facing north, where we're going to be heading up toward Niles. Again, this is the South Bend Secondary, ex-Michigan Central line that ran from Niles straight down into South Bend. Here's Pendle Street that we're going to be crossing here right in front of us. Over to the right you will see a siding. That was the Big C Lumber that had a spur, and that was rail served by the local in South Bend well into the 80s. Beyond this point now, as we continue to move up toward Niles, this track pretty much went dormant in the 80s and then was officially abandoned in the early 90s, with the track being removed. This was still operated with a daily train. I believe it ran something like Monday through Saturday, and it was an overnight operation, as I recall, in the very early 80s, but that didn't continue for much longer. Of course, the big South Bend customer was Notre Dame University Coal, which moved out of South Bend on the MC connector. We covered that in the other volumes that we had, where we retrieved some empty coal cars up there. Up ahead we see the Indiana Toll Road, Overpass, and Cleveland Road. Yeah, this track originally Michigan Central, then it became New York Central, Penn Central, and then finally Conrail. Signals for Cleveland Road. They didn't have gates as we have here, but they did have signals. And they are operating. How about that? It's kind of a little short mixed freight here that we put together. Did quite a bit of extra scenery work on this track. Got kind of a weed choked, overgrown effect to it, which looks pretty good. There's just no end to what you can do with these things scenic wise. I mean, they're never really completely done, but we've got this one far enough along. We tried to be as faithful as we could to proper distances between roads and total mileages and such, but of course you can't duplicate what the structures actually look like or what they look like now, so it's pretty much just the route. But we'll be talking about the way things were. The next road we'll be coming up to, in fact you see cars crossing up ahead there, is Bertrand Road, Christ the King Church to the right. Now there was a siding up there that we'll kind of see. We kind of put in some rusted rails to kind of signify. Early maps show that there was actually a runaround track passing siding between Bertrand Road and Brick Road, and there also was a couple of industrial spurs in there. What those businesses were that received freight, I don't recall. That's way before my time. But here when we pass Bertrand, there you kind of see that siding. Later maps don't show it, but earlier ones do show it as being a complete passing siding. But there were spurs that went off to the right. Those haven't been added here because we're not sure exactly what the configuration of them was, but there were industries there. Again, this track is all abandoned now. This is the Indiana Michigan bike trail, which is kind of a conglomeration of different short segment trails, but it's kind of all referred to under the umbrella of Indiana Michigan. Yeah, this spur started somewhere, I guess, fairly close to Darden Road and not too far from Brick Road, which we will be coming to up here shortly. The Brick Road crossing. Get some different views here, different looks of the train from different camera views. As mentioned before, this Trainz Simulator is not the most realistic in terms of operation of a train, but where it excels is in its scenic abilities and route building. I mean, you can just do so much with this. Many of the other simulators you can't even build routes with, but some of them are much more realistic in terms of operations. Here is a Brick Road that we are crossing now. Not much on this line between here and the south side of Niles. That's probably one of the reasons why it was abandoned. There really wasn't any kind of a business up in this area, just pretty much straight track. But then things do change when we get closer to Niles. Going to kind of do this in two parts. This part here we're going to probably just run into Michigan as far as Fulkerson Road. Then we'll do a second part which will go from Fulkerson up to the Amtrak line in Niles, including the street running down 9th Street. In the distance you could see some traffic crossing there. That of course is Auten Road. Here is Auten Road here that we are crossing. Signals, they did have signals there just like that. Going a little bit faster than we should here, so we're going to have to slow down. That's what I mean about juggling, operating a train and camera work and talking. It can be a challenge with this thing. But okay, and there we have Adams Road that we are crossing now. Again, a little bit too fast. There was a station here called Palisades. In fact, there's pictures of Penn Central trains that I have seen in this area. In fact, I'll probably be posting one on social media shortly. Then following this, the next major road we'll be coming to here is State Line Road. Here's State Line Road right here. Leaving Indiana, St. Joe County, and entering Michigan, Berrien County. As we almost crawl to a stop. I really like the way this turned out, though. I think we really got the essence of the line as it was in the final years here, with just the overgrown appearance and a lot of vegetation and all that kind of stuff. Used a switch engine today because it kind of gives the best window view. And continuing to head north. In a separate video we'll take a little closer look at the abandonment of this line in the 80s. It's interesting because when the abandonments were filed, they pretty much were kind of looking at abandoning all these lines, even the MC connector, and leaving Notre Dame high and dry. Of course, Notre Dame strongly protested at that time in the 80s because they were still receiving coal at that time, and so they needed access. And it almost looked like Conrail was kind of leaning on keeping this part of the line open and closing the MC connector that ran to the west side of South Bend, so then the coal would have been coming out of Niles. But of course, as it turned out, this line here was just made dormant and finally removed, and just the connector remained in South Bend, and that's how the coal traveled to Notre Dame from the South Bend side. Also, the Niles side had their business on the south side of Niles, so that part was operated, and the local out of Kalamazoo handled the Niles portion, and all of this track here in the middle was just removed. Here we're approaching Ontario Road now. I believe there was a trailer park just to the right on the other side of the street here, or the northeast side of the crossing. Again, good overgrown effect going on here. Get some different views here for you. Next road we'll be coming up to shortly will be Bertrand Road. In the vicinity of Bertrand Road there was kind of a more forested, shady, heavy tree area, which is still quite evident today when you ride a bike or hike or walk this trail in that area. And we've kind of captured that in the scenery here. Maybe a little bit more overgrown than we should have, but there's a good view of the wheels. That actually looks pretty good for not being the most authentic train-wise. This is pretty good, I think. It's good enough for me. Yeah, we'll be getting into that thicker wooded area up ahead. You'll see the effect that we got there. We'll actually have some branches hitting the train, which maybe that is actually more accurate, at least in the final days of this line. But yeah, here we'll get into that shaded area before we reach Bertrand Road. Yeah, we're really striking some pretty good branches there, boy. Haven't run this thing at night yet. That'll probably make for an interesting experience. And there's Bertrand Road that we are crossing right there. Now you've seen some rail there over to the left. Some early maps indicate that there was some sort of a siding or passing siding on the south side of Bertrand Road. I don't believe that there was any industry there. I couldn't find anything on that in later maps, so maybe if somebody knows or remembers. But early track charts do show something there, so there could have been. And the next big road we'll be coming up to in a little ways will be Fulkerson Road. There we have quite a few spurs. You will, as we will approach that, you're going to see a siding that actually crossed Fulkerson, that went to the Niles packaging. And then a little farther on the other side of Fulkerson, there'll be two spurs over to the left that went to Citgo and Koch Fuels, I believe. That's a big tank farm area to the northwest of that crossing, and that's what some of the spurs were for. If you look at the satellite shots nowadays, you can still see some of the buildings there where the one of the spurs did run right in between a couple buildings. So we tried to kind of make a mock-up of that for you, which we will see when we cross the crossing, once we get moving here again, since we stopped. Just not paying attention to my train driving like I should. Yeah, up ahead you can kind of see a building that is fairly close to the track on the right hand side. That is there today. And there you see traffic crossing Fulkerson Road. There were signals at Fulkerson Road. So kind of keep keep alert as we get up closer to that for those sightings over to the left. Then we'll actually even take a kind of take an aerial view to get a overlook at them better, because that's kind of where we'll be ending the trip. But yeah, to the left there now you can kind of see that rail embedded there in the sod when it crosses the road. That's what kind of ran to the Niles packaging. And then just up ahead you'll see the two sightings that went into the fuel distribution area. We'll take a little better look at those for you. Yeah, kind of two separate tracks. Yeah, there's some of the tanks of the tank farm that we can see. Not totally to scale, but we just tried to I mean, not even close to scale as far as how close they were, but you kind of get the idea. There was that sighting by the Niles packaging. Now there we see to the left, there's the two spurs that kind of branched off. That's kind of how they looked. One went in between two buildings, another one went to another buildings. That was the Citco and the Koch Fuels, as best as I can figure. It's kind of hard to see those rails there. It's just rails and sod, because I'm not sure how long these actually receive freight. If this went probably into the 80s, but I'm not sure how much and how far, because in the final days of operation, even from the Niles site, it was only the French paper mill up there that was receiving freight. We'll see that later, but this is kind of where we'll leave this video. So hope you've enjoyed. Hope you got at least a few laughs out of this, if nothing else. Like, subscribe, and we'll be doing that part 2 to finish up this trip up to Niles. So we'll just kind of leave you here with some different poses and views of the train, and we'll see you on part 2 as we head up to Niles and the street running.